Here's what's crazy. Coach Abdesalam Ouaddou has one bad result, and all of the sentiment around him changes, the sentiment around the players, the sentiment around what Pirates is meant to do and how to do it starts to change. Expectations are a very interesting thing. The definition of expectation is the strong feeling that something will happen. And it's either you live up to these expectations or you can't get to them. But the funny thing about expectations is that they're very rarely fair. And in Coach Ouaddou's case, I want to speak a little bit about what the expectations of him, of his team, of what Pirates could do this season was. Because I feel as though we're being a little bit unfair, especially for a coach that's coming into the situation that is coming into at Orlando Pirates. Lest we forget that this is an Orlando Pirates team that has been competing, as people say, versus Mamelodi Sundowns in the league. It's an Orlando Pirates team that has last season finished second, but also got to the semifinals of the CAF Champions League. It's a Pirates team that you could say have very high expectations going into the fourth year of a 5-year plan, alleged 5-year plan, where things are meant to happen. But have we been fair on Coach Ouaddou and what he's walking into? I want to touch on a couple of areas that maybe we take for granted in what Coach Ouaddou has to do with Orlando Pirates, or what Coach Ouaddou's situation actually is at Orlando Pirates. Think about it. Number one, you're competing with Jose's ghost. You're competing with a coach that won 5 trophies in 3 years. You're competing with El Padre, someone who, when they've come through some difficulties, introduced youth, did some incredible things at Orlando Pirates, things that you cannot fight against. I believe he's got the highest points total that Pirates has achieved in the PSL era, if I'm not mistaken. You're competing with somebody that had some sort of success for Orlando Pirates and some sort of success in the league. Someone who, besides the league, most of the other trophies fell to outside of the Carling knockout. So already, the bar is extremely high. The bar is extremely high because you don't get the luxury of walking in the way that Urvero walked in, even though pre him, Pirates had gone to a CAF Confed final. Pirates had won an MTN 8 with Zimbabwe, if I'm not mistaken. Nobody cares about that. But the interesting part about chasing a ghost is that sometimes the memories get fuzzy. Sometimes the memories of how we remember the guy that has been put on a pedestal make that person a myth and a legend. I've spoken before on the podcast about myths and legends and chasing myths and legends and how hard it is. Because the truth of the matter is that Jose was still double digits behind Sundowns. The gap had gone from 19 points to 16 points to 23 points, and I believe 12 last season, which is progress objectively. But progress in the grand scheme of things means that even Jose had not really come that close to catching Mamelodi Sundowns. He just covered it with the cup wins, which are also tough. I spoke about in the last podcast episode the difference between the league and the cups and how, yes, it's different tournaments, but they've got their own pressures and they may be equal and opposite. But the fact of the matter is that to expect Coach Ouaddou to come in and win a league is unfounded. To expect Coach Ouaddou to come in and continue on this 4-year plan, continue it on knowing that last season they went on a little bit of a dip. Last season, you're coming into a season where, last season ended the way it did, and you're coming into a season where there might be, it might be hard to motivate players who have lost a guy that they loved. But to ask him to continue that realistically is not a realistic expectation. The thing about expectations is that they're nice up until the point where you have to act on the things. If you don't act on the things the way we like, things can change very quickly. One game has changed the outlook. Let's talk about the previous players. The second thing that he has to deal with. He has to contend with players that had a coach that chose them, that gave them responsibility, that trusted them, that elevated them, that players loved. Coach Jose El Padre, when you hear the players speak of him, he's a father figure. He's an inspiration point. He's a confidant. He's somebody that allowed us to express ourselves the way we wanted to express ourselves. You watch the change room episodes and you see the players chiming in and speaking and gaining that confidence. But you know what the truth of that also is? It's tough to get players on side that are, one, regarded as superstars, and number two, have a deeper connection with the previous guy. I'm going to start with the deeper connection. The deeper connection is something that many coaches struggle with when they come into teams. You think about Andre Villas-Boas at Chelsea coming in after Mourinho at Chelsea. You think about when the players speak about him, and you hear John Terry and Lampard and Didier, but John Terry has spoken about how coach comes in and he wanted to change the way that we do things. Coach comes in and he wanted, we must take turns sitting first class and whatnot. And as senior players, you looked at him and you said, no. You think about David Moyes joining Manchester United after Fergie, where Rio looked at this man and the things he was saying. And he was like, I don't know if we agree with that. And he said it was very early on. They were preparing for a game. He came in with a different point of view. He came in with a non-Manchester United point of view. And they went, no, this is not the guy. You think about locally. Guys, just last season, we saw what happened when Coach Manqoba had to step in after the whole Rulani thing. And how it seems from the outside, allegedly, there were lines that were drawn inside that team. And Coach Manqoba had to come in and try and give authority. And try and be the guy and tell the players that this is what we're going to do. And if you don't take me seriously, then I'm not going to play you. And we saw how that played out. Player power in these situations is a very interesting thing because you don't have player power when the players are starting out. You don't have player power when people don't have awards. You don't have player power when people have not performed to their credit. They performed. But now you have to come into that space and manage egos that were not built for you. You know, when Pep Guardiola landed at Barcelona, and I'm not saying this was happening with Ouaddou, but when Pep Guardiola landed at Barcelona, the first thing he did was to move out Deco, to move out Ronaldinho, to try to move out Samuel Eto'o. Because I think he realized that those players will never be under my control. Aksama player wami. And it's either I'm going to have to bend over backwards and allow them to be on equal footing and maybe set a bad precedent for the rest of the club, but have these guys on my side, or I'm going to have to discipline and separate and show everybody else that, you know, when you look at these guys, they've got no special privileges under me. I'm new. But in new manager bounce, new manager influence. You think about Mikel Arteta with the non-negotiables that he came into it with Arsenal, where he was looking at all of the guys and saying, hey, I don't care who you are. But the sad part is that those players are still there. The sad part is that you still have to use those players. The sad part is that you have to look at those guys and make decisions based on what you're seeing there. And can you realistically bench Mbata without questions being asked? Can you realistically bench a Makaula without questions being asked? Can you bench certain players, Abo Mahopa, Abo Mabasa, without questions being asked? Because, again, the ghost rings true for players as well. I've heard a lot of people here saying, no, the older players, how do you change a thing that was working? How do you change a system? How do you fix something that's not broken? But guys, let's be honest. Those same players didn't go and win the league. Those same players struggled in some of the games. Those same players were not as fluid and as amazing as what we're making them out to be. Now, I don't want to take credit away from them. I think the defense was incredible the way that they fought. But weren't you guys the same people who were complaining about Umbata and his availability to fetch the ball? Umbata and his availability to play the ball and be a good midfielder, complete midfielder. Weren't people the same guys that were complaining about this? But now, all of a sudden, Kirita. By the way, how many goals did Mabasa score last season, for example? And not to denigrate whatever Chico's done, but how many goals did he score last season for you to be clamoring for him to come in? How many goals did Mahopa? And Mahopa that some of us defended and said, you guys maybe don't understand the role that Mahopa plays in order to open up spaces for Aborile. But the same Mahopa who has been called the central defensive striker, who has been called Kingston Carter, is now the person you are calling for. Why? Because memories and the ghost, it's tough. And now he has to figure out what he needs to do. I want to go to the third thing that he needs to look out for here. The third thing he needs to look out for is the new players. Because unlike in previous years, he doesn't have the luxury of coming out to the press, of looking in the public and having the excuse of saying, these guys are not good enough. Plenty of people are crying about Apodis. Plenty of people are crying about Mbule. We're crying about Mbule. Plenty of people have spoken highly of Abunduli. Abum Butuma is a young player that can come in and give you something different in the crosses. We were hearing all the stories. But now you also have to balance that aspect of it. When I bring in my own guys, and I want to start with my own guys, for whatever reason, it could be because I've trained with them and these guys are more receptive to my training methods because they're new, because they'll listen to me. These guys are the guys that are going to ride this ship for me. And I trust them and I want to show them loyalty. Now I've got questions about whether doing that is the right thing. Now I have to look at these guys and I give them chances, and if they don't perform, what happens to my previous point that I spoke about where people are still remembering the old players? Think about what happened to Mangoba. The first moment that he lost the calling knockout final, when he lost a couple of games in the CAF where it was looking shady, when he played the Polokwane City game, if you guys remember, the first thing that happened was that people started saying, hey, wena. Uzwanu misapi? Now uzwanu khona. Why isn't our Zwane starting? Yeah, wena. Look at Mukwena. Why aren't you playing this Mukwena of ours that we love? Yeah, wena. Look at this Mudawu. Why aren't you playing this Mudawu that is our star? Why are you beefing with these guys? Sits on his shoulders that you have to gain results. Do you know what else is tricky? To go to the fourth point. What the other thing that's tricky is, I asked a simple question. Can Pirates handle a big squad of quality? Can you rotate the right way? Can you make the right decisions when you've got so many people that are available? We make fun of Mamelodi Sundowns quite a bit, and we speak about how Sundowns signs everybody and brings in every good player, and the bench and the stands, and they've got two good teams. Any coach could win under those conditions. But we don't speak about what happens, man, when you've got Mbule, and you've got Tito, and you've got Mbata, and you've got Lamini, and you have to fit Nduli in, and you've got Makaula, and you've got all of this array of players. Also, Usilepek Melangen at some point because he's a development player. What about Denson? Oh, Mariko came in and he had a good performance. Those things are stressful. It's not easy to have a big squad. It's not easy to keep everybody happy. Yes, competition is there, but how do you facilitate that competition? Can you facilitate the competition? Can you be the be-all and end-all voice at Pirates to make sure that when ungafuni player for your reasons, what happens then? Remember the situation in rulani, where the rumors say, he didn't like the fact that the club was signing players that were not his. I know it's a slightly different situation, but he didn't like the fact that those players were coming in. But his hands were tied. And allegedly, it was an ultimatum to say, it's either me or the other guy. You either allow me to run this team the way I was reared to see this team running, or you give it to the other guy. It's tough balancing all of this. It's tough trying to make all of this work, especially with the situation that Coach Ouaddou finds himself in. But you know what makes this 10 times harder? What makes this 10 times harder is that when you start coaching one of the big teams, 30% of your job is what happens on the pitch. 70% of your job is what happens out here. What happens on social media? What happens on Facebook? What happens on X? What happens on TikTok? When George is speaking about you, when Junior Khanye is speaking about you, when Shakes Rampedi is speaking about you, when Super Journal is saying things about when things are being leaked, when about BBK have stuff to say, when there's people and influence outside of you that you have to manage, that is often the toughest thing to do. And what's interesting is that going into the game, literally, an hour or two from now, going into that game, every decision that he makes now, one of the factors that's going to play into it is, what is the public perception going to be? And what's interesting about what Pirates fans are saying right now and the type of pressure they're putting on the coach is, if he carries on with his own players, the guys that he's been choosing in the starting lineups in the past 2 games, if he carries on that way, does he risk further alienation from the team, from the club, from the fans? Does he risk now being a lone wolf that has to go fight on his own to prove everything right with his own thing? Does he become stubborn? Because that could be strength, but it could be a massive weakness that can be exploited by fans. Or does he give into the fan pressure, give into the broader club pressure, and risk losing any amount of power that he's going to have as a coach? Because think about it. If I'm one of the players that's considered one of the stars, and I'm not on the starting lineup, I'm not on the bench, and I'm sitting somewhere in the stands, and he now has to bring me back because of noise out there, that means that whenever we have some issues, I can just sit and say, no, just give it a couple of minutes. Otlo trenda hona jwale. And now he's going to have to do what the fans dictate. And can you control that as a coach? Hey, go back to the previous team. Go back to the winning lineup. Go back to whatever. Listen to those words. Listen to the words people are saying. Go back to Jose's team. Will I be able to respect you as Coach Ouaddou if you go back to Jose's team? Now, I'm not saying this is happening, and I'm not saying this is how it's going to work out, or these challenges are the things that are going to happen. But what I am saying is that maybe we need to calibrate. Maybe we need to be honest with the expectations so that we're not unfair, overly unfair towards the coach, towards the players, towards the club. What I preach every day, and maybe why Pirates fans don't hear me properly, and why Pirates fans don't take what I say very, very carefully. You have to be honest with yourself first. You have to be honest to say that, guys, the gap between Pirates and Sundowns, though getting smaller progressively, a little bit, is not just a gap that's from the last 8 seasons. It's a gap that Sundowns has won by double digits over the last few, but then also it's something that Pirates hasn't done from 2013. So expecting out of the blue for Pirates to do this and to jump over all of the hurdles and to win immediately, just because, without properly analyzing the different things that are happening at the club, means that your expectations, back to what we were speaking about, are going to be based off of an unfair place. And sometimes I feel as though these vague things and the vague conversations we have is so that we can feel better about ourselves later on. When we state some facts here and on other platforms, yes, you may have a problem with the tone and all of that stuff, but let's take into account all of these different things, because I think it creates a far better environment for Coach Ouaddou, for people to say, we're going to stand by you, Coach Ouaddou, because we understand the road that is ahead. We understand the type of blow that Pirates took with Jose Rivero leaving. We understand that we might take a step or two back right now, because now Musha. And maybe that patience, the same patience that was afforded to Jose after a while, should be given to coach so that he can go out and build his vision. Go out and see how he interprets what all of this is going to happen. Aksu Jose, uhambilu Jose. Aksu Rulani, uhambilu Rulani. Aksu Tetu Mitru, uhambilu Tetu Mitru, uhambilu Stuart Baxter. We should temper our expectations based on what we are seeing, based on the situation as it is, as truthful as we can be, as objective as we can be. Because if we keep feelingsing this thing and we keep putting our feelings inside and putting our unfair expectations, our memories, our nostalgia into this, I think it creates an environment where we're not being honest with each other. And the moment you're not being honest with each other, you start missing out on your goals. I can easily come out here and say, I want 1 million followers tomorrow. But the truth is that you're going to have to build towards that. And maybe my goal is 40,000 on YouTube. Maybe my goal is that because I'm being honest with myself. And if I exceed that, it's great. If I exceed it and I go to 50, I've done a job. I am okay. I'm living beyond what I thought. But it shouldn't be the expectation of what's going to happen. It's a nice idea to have. But in the interim, you have to understand the building blocks of what needs to happen. The building blocks at Pirates is going to be, there's going to be a situation, a period where we are getting used to Coach Ouaddou. The players are getting used to his tactics. The players are getting used to his selections. The players are getting used to what he needs to bring. It shouldn't be absent of results. I agree with that, but that's realistic. There's going to be turnovers. So already we are seeing players leaving. Abonkot have left. Aborile, there's rumors. There's going to be turnovers within that. There's going to be new players that walk in that also have to adjust. Playing for Polokwane City and playing for Pirates is two different things. Playing for Sundowns and playing for Pirates is two different things. Not better or worse, different. So there's also that adjustment. Like I say all the time about Chiefs and Pirates, the challenge is not when things are going well, when you are hugging each other, when your name is being sung, when everybody loves you. That's not the challenge. The challenge is how you handle yourself when you are losing. Are you still a winner? The greatest coaches we've had have been winners through the losses, have been winners through the hardships. And that is what you need to project towards these people. Guys, Coach Pitso was taken out by police at some point at Mamelodi Sundowns. Yes, he was backed by chairman, but fans were chasing him. And he won the league the season after. Little bit of time when he took over to take them out of relegation, won the league the following year. Now, when we think back to Coach Pitso, we think back on how great it was and what he built and all of that. But can you be a consistent winner through that? No excuses, no this, no that, just straight up coming out and going to go win. That is very important at the Soweto Giants. This is for everybody, players, coach, everyone. But an attitude needs to change, and an attitude starts from you being honest about where you are, where you want to go, and the road, the actual road. Maybe it's not a highway, guys. Maybe you should be on the highway, but you're on another track because you think that one's more noble or better. But let's be fair towards the coaches and the players. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and help the platform grow. And if you can donate anything, if you can contribute anything, that would be great. 10 rand, 20 rand, 50, 15, 50,000. That's fine. 15,000, 50,000, that would be great. All towards this, I'd be very happy. Like I said, upgrading sound, fixing laptops, trying to give you the best content that I can. That is what I use this for. So please support, and I'll keep putting things on the table. Remember, I'm not here to be right. I'm here to start conversations that we can take into our WhatsApp groups, our friend groups, our discussions about football, our thoughts about football, so that we can think a little bit deeper about this football that we love, and hopefully come up with solutions to make it even better, even if it starts with us. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll see you guys on the next one.